Hello, everyone.
Hey.
Hello. Fantastic. I am going to have a lot of fun sharing some information with you about my approach to painting, or a approach to painting. And as my teacher, Ray Kinser, always said, there's no such thing as the approach to painting. Everyone goes about it in a slightly different way, but I've got some ideas I'd like to share with you. I toned this canvas a medium kind of grayish green. And I did this on purpose because working on a toned canvas is easier than working on a white canvas. It's easier to judge the values. And it should be, if you were looking at this with a black and white photograph, it should be very close to this palette here. Now, this may be reflecting light from your angle, but I actually took my iPhone and made a photo of this earlier to see how close it was to the palette, and it's very close in value. But that makes it a little easier for me to judge the value. All right, so we're back to drawing. Do keep an eye on the clock, Becca, and we'll go 20 minutes and give her a break.
Starting now?
No, like we're already 5 minutes in. So I'm squinting down, trying to see things simply. This canvas will work as a value itself for quite a while. That's too light. It could be picking up a little glare, but I've got a fan brush handy. I encourage you, now I always joke about these because when I was a teenager, I would watch William Alexander and Bob Ross make pine trees out of these things. And I can make a mean pine tree with this, but it's great for slightly fussing with the glare. And if I make sure that these strokes go with the light, I can see better what I've just put down. They're going in opposition to the light. It's hard to see the value. One of the things that we're always struggling with as artists is the reflection of the oil paint. I'll hold the brush this way too some, because it really does help to sculpt more if you hold that brush on its side. There's a lot of little reflected lights and things like that. I'm not going to put any of that in yet. I'm going to try to keep this big, simple shapes. I'm looking at that angle there. Squinting down, seeing shape simply, thinking shape and value, but I'm really also thinking the structure and volume we talked about a moment ago.
I have a question about the type of brushes.
This is Silver Grand Prix, which is Dee Silver is the lady that owns that company. I really like her brushes a lot. These are very worn out filberts. I've never thrown a brush away. That wouldn't surprise Maddie, who is frustrated by my brushes, but they're experienced. And I find that sometimes there's a very good use for a worn out brush. Certainly like new brushes, but this is a filbert that's been pretty worn down. Again, I'm working on the drawing. Looking at this now, this grayish green as a value. The light value is what it represents right now. I'm looking where shapes and values flow one into the other. Stepping back and taking a look. Now, this is something I do in my studio all day long, which is to move back and forth, back and forth. I use my finger a lot too. It's a great way to work edges. I don't know how healthy it is, but it's a great way to work edges. All right. Love Jerry's glasses. It's going to be fun. Paint there. Get to that in a bit. All right, let's now shift to looking at, let's move this to be a middle value. We've got some shadows in here. Let me put some light value in. Let's think about that now. I'll mix up white, cad,
I didn't find a device named Light.
cad red. And we have so many computers and Androids here that we don't know how many we haven't shut off. Not what we would do without Alexa, but I guess the government knows what I'm talking about every day. Okay, squinting down. I'm not sure that I'm gonna look at a different brush here. That one, that's too small, that's too big. All right, let's try this. I want to test this. It's much lighter than I thought it would be, but it's also, I think it's not too bad. More of the red and yellow together. Again, look how simple this is and these colors you can get. It's going to be it's amazing how much variety you can get from it. I'll trust that. I'm going to try to block this light in. Keep it big and simple. All right, squinting down, I want basically 3 simple values right now. I don't want to get, I may get a few subtle changes in value as I work, but I'm trying to get 3 simple values. Doing okay, Jerry?
Doing fine, thank you.
Great. Let's put pink in that. I'm still reducing my vision, squinting down. I'll hit that with a fan brush in just a second. Come down. Cross. Look at your angles. Step back. What I love about what we get to do as painters is that so much of what we're doing hasn't changed in a few hundred years. Having a person pose for you, working with oil pigments and hog's hair bristle brushes, wood palettes, been around since the days of Rembrandt and before. He just couldn't have iPhones and do a worldwide zoom. I bet Leonardo da Vinci would have loved this technology, wouldn't he? He may have thought of this already. So I'm laying in just big pieces of value. Step back. I need these this clay that I can work back into, similar to what a sculptor would do, modeling, starting with big simple shapes. Let's go to this side of the head. Don't be afraid to lose things, lose shapes, and come back in and restate them later. And do that with the shadow off the nose. Wow, that's high. I've got that too high over there. Hard to reach. I've got that on my brush and maybe push that into here again. Okay. It's too light. Yeah. All right, I'll take the fan brush, knock all this back so I can see it better. We have to have so many lights to get this to come through on the Zoom. It's like when you do these stage demonstrations, we have to put so much light on them so that they can project it on these screens, but the glare's a little tough. Maddie, you watching the clock or somebody?
Seconds.
How much? 4. Okay. 4 minutes. I'll give her a break in just a second. Just a minute. Now, lower this palette here in a minute. My arm's going to fall off. I don't ever work with my palette like this. It's always in front of me or in my arm, but we knew it's better to see for the demonstration. If we have it up like that, you can see what I'm mixing.
About how thick is the paint when you put down these first layers?
It's certainly not thin, but it's not super thick either.
Are you using any solvent?
Am I using any solvent? Yes, I'm using, not at this moment, but I have a few times. But I've not been using any solvent for the last few minutes. It's just straight paint. And the paint is not super thick. Now, I'm following these paths too of light and shadow patterns. I'm looking, if I've got a light pattern that is traveling from here, I'll look at other places that it travels down the figure, down the head. I'm going to work all this edge stuff here in just a minute. I've got to do that the next sitting. Let's go a little bit more. Cad red here. It's got great color. Okay, all right, so we'll take a break for a second. Look like the Joker right now. Get rid of that. Some green again. I'll work on that in a minute. Okay, so starting to get the right glasses here. Block in, thinking about the light and dark effect. So important that you think about, yes, stretch, and you get her some water too for in a minute, or Coke or something. What would you like? Water, Coke, Sprite, anything, ginger ale, water? Okay, something stiffer. Where do I go? Here? Come over here. Yeah. So one of the things I have to think about in this early stage is how do I get the feeling of that light on the canvas? It's all about the light and shadow right now, the strong effect of her. We're coming. There's just like 72 steps to do anything.
Okay.
Hey. So anyway, so what I'm doing right now is thinking about this light to shadow ratio, the big simple pieces, and I'm not trying to get hung up in any detail at this point. I'm thinking structure, I'm thinking solidity of form, thinking value, and I'm stabbing at the color, but the color is not as important to me as getting the overall feeling of the values. No, I'm sorry, we can't get the perspective that I'm painting because there's no way to put a camera exactly from the angle where I'm standing. It would have to be mounted on my forehead. It's so frustrating, but she's got the camera as close to me as she can get it over there without, I mean, I'm stumbling over the equipment. We can, I tell you what we could do probably. Maddie will make a still photograph from exactly that angle. Is that something you can pop up at some point?
Yeah, I can send it.
She will send a still photograph here in a moment from the angle that I'm standing. So if you could shoot that from where I'm standing and then send them that, that might be of help to them so they can compare. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Sorry, it's just one of those things that there's some limits as to what angles we can get these cameras. So how I had a question about how I control color temperature when your only cool color is a dark, so dark in value. So I'm of course utilizing the coolness of the canvas to help me as well. I'm going to use that black a lot to get some cooler grays and gray greens in just a moment. And I think you'll find this palette has a lot of variety in it, even though it seems fairly limited. It has more variety than you might think. Blowing it up to full screen, I don't know how to do that, but maybe someone's asking about, can we blow this up to full screen? We don't know the answer to that. I'm sorry. It's not something we can control on our end, I don't think. Yeah. Okay. Should do some more painting.
Okay.
Is that good? Get some water? That helps, right?
That's a lot.
Yeah. Grab a different brush. Okay. Let's do some more painting. Look at this arsenal I have here. Got an arsenal. All right, great. There we go. Maddie's going to work on that photo for you. Squinting down. Do my handy dandy. That really flattens that glare and I can see it a lot better. I was telling Jerry she has such a tiny nose. I had not even realized how tiny her nose was until I started looking tonight. We don't have tiny noses in my family. We admire tiny noses.
My grandmother's nose.
Is it really? So interesting how we can see the similarities in their family. Today I was looking at my client and I saw her mother sometimes, and then she turned her head and I saw her father sometimes. It's going to bother me until I establish at least some color on the lips and get rid of the green. So I'm going to block it in almost as just the top lip and the bottom lip together almost, just a simple shape. Looking for a big simple shape. Bottom lip generally, in most all cases, picks up more light than the top lip. Use that handy dandy blender, my finger. Now we'll push paint around. I don't know if you guys do that. I love to work these edges by pushing some of that paint around that's there. You can get some wonderful soft edges that way.
There's a question if you can describe again what you do with the fan brush.
The fan brush helps me to keep the direction, the brush strokes going in a similar direction, which cuts down the glare from the oil paint.
And it's dry.
And it's dry, and you just barely touch it. So it's this a dry brush, and and also it softens edges a little bit, which is nice. So just barely hit it with a whisper, and it keeps that glare down so that I can see it a little better. Now I'm going to put a little bit of this white blouse in so that I can judge some of those values I'm working on in the head against it. It'll help me if I just establish that as a strong light. It's not, that wasn't a real big commitment to it, but just a little bit as a gauge. I'm using a little bit of this copal painting medium, which will make the paint have more of has a smoother viscosity, kind of moves a little better. Having that there helps me judge some of these other things I'm going to be doing in her head.
What is the painting medium's name?
Copal, C-O-P-A-L. Here it is. Copal painting medium by Grumbacher. As you can tell by the packaging, from 1965. Becca was in Dallas for a while. Isn't that where you were when this happened? In Dallas, and she heard there was a big art company that was closing up for forever, and they were selling everything in their warehouse. And she went down there for me and found that they had boxes and boxes of copal painting medium, never been opened, canned, just like I guess a can of oysters from 50 years ago. And it's just perfect. It works great. I've still got enough to last a lifetime. But I mean, look at the packaging on that. I mean, it is forever old, but it works beautifully. It's not gone bad. changing glasses. Squinting down, I see some a dark shape I want to put in on this side. Hopefully after this sitting, I will have had the head blocked in, and then we can sharpen. Not dark enough. The one color that I miss the most in this Zorn palette is alizarin. I love alizarin. I may have to put some out here in a little bit, but alizarin is a great, cool red that I love. But this is a good way to think about working because it has you not thinking so much about the color, thinking more about the value. Squinting. Let this be soft and run together. Flatten that. Now let's get the reflected light. Make a stab at it, see where we are. See, it's close. Today, I was painting on a study of an African-American gentleman. And I've done the whole piece so far, the whole sketch so far with the Zorn palette, but there's some limitations to it with darker skin, I think. And I was telling Maddie, I think I'm gonna have to put a little bit more, a little fuller palette on the, I'll show you the sketch in a minute, but it's not finished, but I'm just doing it from a photograph as a preliminary study.
Are you using a different brush for each color?
I'm not using a different brush for each color. I'm picking the brush. The brush that I pick up has more to do with a shape that I see. And I think that if I use that brush for that shape, it will be a better tool. But it has more to do with the shape that I'm looking at that I want than the color. Now, some people will say, oh, I'm holding a brush for my darks, my lights, and my medium values. I've just never been able to do that. I'm not disciplined enough, I guess. Kind of, you see here, I'm drawing a little bit again. I'm thinking about, let's see, all in there, just let that fall away. I mean, not describe that so much. Let it be soft. In fact, the light striking her brow bone is more important than the detail of her eye right there. This light here, you doing okay? Mm-hmm. Great. Well, you hadn't fallen asleep yet, so you're doing better than most models. You know who I have to say at what profession are my best posers, on the model stand? My best posers are judges. And I realized after a while, that's just all they do all day long anyway, is just sit. So they're good at that.
Are you cleaning your brushes between colors?
I have a paper towel here that I sometimes reach for to clean my brush. I clean them probably a little less than you'd think. Inch this value up here. The thing I'm thinking about most is value and shape this stage. Value and shape. And this glare is maddening. Probably even flattens it out for the camera so you can see it better.